Dusty Smurfing Thursday. I am so glad to be here and break up a little bit of the chaos that's been going on. We've got an extra special high octane, high IQ show tonight with our extra special guest, Greg. But before we get into that, we've got my co-hosts, my cohorts, my brothers at arms, the men who I would gladly go to jail for and with, Ryan and Ray. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing this evening?
Well, I'm sitting here in my basement just living a life of quiet desperation and trying not to lash out at those that are more successful than me. I really don't want to do that tonight. And I hope that I can keep it together. I just hope I can.
Well, I was always taught to punch up, not down. So I thought lashing out at people that were more successful than you was like the appropriate thing to do, right? And that the phrase, punch up, not down.
I just hope I'm not projecting or that somebody else isn't either. But hey, it's good to be here. It's good to have our guest here. I'm really excited to introduce him. But Ray, how are things? Are you getting everything back in order after your hiatus, right, from the grass out there? It's the longest it hasn't seen you, right?
Yeah. Well,
did you tell everybody? You really should have messed with people and said, well, they, the Bureau of Prisons said I can go on work release to the States, the continental United States. And, I got a week away, actually, but I'm back now and I got the ankle bracelet back on. I'm ready to treat your lawn.
Actually, I've already put people on notice.
What are you threatening them? Is that what I'm hearing? Are you saying like, listen, if you give me one ounce of lip, I'll leave this MFer. I'm gonna vacate the island. Is that what's going on here?
I'm gonna oversee your Zoysia in Hawaii.
Yep. It's like
take that.
Don't give me a freaking reason to pack up and go. Don't give me a reason to.
Oh, Ray.
There's something about East Tennessee. Once it loops you, people used to call Memphis the black hole because it's funny. Like, everybody I went to high school with, everybody moves away and they're like, oh, I can't wait to get out of Memphis. And then, at the 10-year high school reunion, you'd ask about, oh yeah, man, you went to so-and-so. What do you do now? Like, oh yeah, I live in Midtown, oh yeah, I'm over in Seattle. Like, oh, you're back in Memphis? Yeah, I'm back in Memphis. Okay. But it seems like East Tennessee kind of has that effect too. Gentlemen, let's move into our guest, Greg. I have not seen you yet. I've talked to you, chatted back and forth. I'm glad to see you here, sir. I threw on my headphones and there was a talk of IT. So I've got to ask, are you an IT professional?
Yeah, I'm in IT. I'm a network engineer. This is a small ISP.
This MFer right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. All right.
Got him! Greg, it does not shock me, especially based on the things we were talking about or that I was stalking you on Twitter about, because most normal people aren't interested in those types of conversations, yet not only were you interested in them, you pursued them, and then you even went after the authors of said articles to try and gain more direct knowledge from them, even to the point that you were like straight up in public. You're like, hey, your email isn't working. How the hell do I get a hold of you? I was like, that guy right there is a perfect person for Thirsty Thursday. So welcome aboard the Soul Train. We're glad you're here, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk to you guys.
Yeah, hopefully we don't embarrass ourselves or you, which we're prone to do. I think we can at least have a decently high level conversations without making ourselves too much of the idiot. But you never know.
Yeah.
We'll step in some dog shit if we got to.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So, Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a network guy. How do you go from network engineering to the lawn space?
Yeah, it's probably about 4 years ago. First time homeowner. I had about 3/4 of an acre, breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, is that my fault, or is it is Comcast out to get you, J Pink? Are they monitoring your private conversations?
Yeah. For whatever reason, Greg, you keep dropping frames to us. I'm gonna lower what we're sending you.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this.
I'm a network engineer. I can't.
Well, J Pink, the producer engineer, is gonna manipulate some bandwidth up and down and see if we can't get this corrected. Already it looks better.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not freezing.
You're good.
Did you have to allocate some more priority to your network connection and like take it away from the kids or something?
QoS, quality of service.
Did you, where do you live?
I live in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
La Crosse, Wisconsin. I
That's
gotta
not really what I
say,
said,
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah, I got
Greg,
that Wisconsin. Yeah, that accent.
you don't sound as Canadian as the other Wisconsians that I know. So this is
Yeah,
good. So
they're
far,
up
so
north.
good. Are you from there? You've always been there?
Yeah, for the most part, I grew up here. I've only moved. I moved to Utah for like maybe about 3 or 4 months, and I had to get out of there. But that's my living situation was
That's
Utah.
not I was gonna say that's not much of a chance. That's straight up like, yeah, I'm gonna give you 120 days, and that's all you got. Like if you can't, I just don't think this is working out, Utah. It's not me. It's definitely you. So
Did you put everybody on notice? Did you give them the Ray treatment?
Pretty much.
upper deck that toilet in the apartment, and I moved out. That's how I did it, right there. Hate you, Utah. No, I don't know. I'm just making that up. I don't think he did that, but
Well, when you were
boy.
telling us about how you went from IT to lawn care, you cut out. So let's try it again.
Yeah.
Tell us that transition.
Yeah, first time homeowner. Yeah, so I had about 3/4 of an acre, and I had no idea how to treat it. The only thing I did was practically all I did was mow it. So I got a little help from my father-in-law, who was like, "All right, you got to put fertilizer on this thing." So I bought maybe about 4 bags of fertilizer, I think like a Menards, kind of a cheap brand, and he threw it down and it looked a lot better. But I didn't have a clue how to maintain a lawn, and 3/4 of an acre is because all I had was a mower. I didn't have a spreader. I didn't have a sprayer. I didn't have anything. So after that, I moved to my current place now, and I've been here for about 3 years, and it's 500 square feet. And I'm like, well, all right, this is a time where I can manage a lawn. So I do what a lot of people do. I went on YouTube to learn about lawn care, and so that's when I came across Alan Hain, Ryan Knorr, I think it was John Perry, and some others. And that was basically when I started my lawn care education.
And okay, so that was the start of your lawn care education. When did it go from lawn care education to I use full-fledged obsession, maybe is the word I'm looking for, or phrase?
I do have an obsessive personality, so I don't just dabble into things. I take it to the extreme typically.
Yeah, dabbling is for cocaine, not for life choices, right?
Yeah.
Intravenous lawn care.
So yeah. So
give me a vein.
Yeah, I guess. So I started to do a little bit more research, and that's when I reached out to like University Extension Office, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I think the first person I came across was Eric Watkins, from the University of
Oh, yeah.
Minnesota. Maggie Reeder, I believe, just joined on not too long ago. But I was interested in his work on fine fescues. I think he's part of some group called it's like Low Input Lawns or something like that. And he talked a lot about fine fescues and did a lot of studies on fine fescues. And so I read a lot about just fine fescues, low input lawns, NOMO, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I heard about Dr. Doug Soldat, a soil scientist out of the University of Wisconsin. And the stuff I was reading, watching, listening to of his content was just gold, and it was a lot of really useful, practical information. Even though a lot of it was geared towards like golf course superintendents or people who manage sports fields and that, I still found it a lot very applicable to my situation just as a homeowner taking care of his lawn. And that kind of transitioned to he mentioned Micah Woods and MLSN in one of his presentations. So I got into Micah Woods and I learned about his blog, AsianTurfGrass.com. And then I got into all the blog posts that he posted and was reading up on a lot of USGA green section record articles and all that kind of stuff. And then it just snowballed from there. So I got into Travis Shattuck's.
Then it snowballed.
Like,
Holy
obsessive.
shit.
And this is just in the last year, really.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of
those couple month-long benders, but I really didn't fall off the rails until that third or fourth one. I mean, and then it got hard.
I was hooked. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, so okay, so I guess it's like any subject, right, that you first discover, and there's that whole like curve of understanding, the pressing topics that are out there and the people that are driving thought and everything like that. So at what point did you feel like you started to kind of understand at a deeper level, right? Like, was it something that you read? Was it sort of more of a longer term thing that you got in there and said, okay, like now I understand this whole system and not just like this one thing that is going on in a turfgrass system?
To be honest, I feel like I just kind of scratched the surface a little bit.
We all are. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still feel like I know nothing about this stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of stood out. I haven't really, I just kind of researched more of the stuff that's, like I said, applicable to my situation. So like turfgrass fertility. So when it comes to like PGRs or collecting, clipping volume, a lot of that stuff I'm interested in, but I'm more focused on like NPK, macronutrients, and the like. And I get I get what you're saying about kind of the whole system kind of a thing. And I still don't feel like I'm there, especially with nitrogen. Okay. I feel like I still got a handle a little bit on like phosphorus and potassium and reasons why you should apply it and why you shouldn't apply it. But I still understand this stuff kind of more at I would say a high level.
Okay.
And so I guess I'll start talking about MLSN. For me was a mover and a shaker of sorts, because it was so far from anything I learned in respect to a formal education, right? It was this crazy foreign concept. And even today, like when I look at it, I think MLSN as a floor. And now I did reach out to Michael Woods and I was like, are you telling me I should maintain my soil P levels at 21 parts per million? Are you telling me I should maintain my soil K levels at 50 parts per million and I shouldn't apply any fertilizer to any potassium until I get to 50 parts per million? And he's like, no, it's just kind of a guiding range, right? Like that's the floor. We know that when you hit this, the probability of you reaching issues increases exponentially, right? And it's a very hard thing for me to become accustomed to because like so I'm coming up in it. Penn State was always an elite leader, and Penn State, you're managing 200 to 300 parts per million of potassium in the soil, right? And that's was just normal to me. And now all of a sudden it's the law of minimums, right? And how can we get more out of less kind of sort of thing. And it was shocking. And that's why when I saw you were referencing Travis Shaddix's work on um, a modified form of MLSN, it caught me in another one of those, you know, floor on the jaw on the table kind of sort of situations where I was like, ah, damn, now I gotta dive into this too. And it and to kind of bring it all full circle, one thing that where I did there was at one point in my career where I did go hyper crazy regarding phosphorus, and it was when I was managing Centipede in Augusta, Georgia. And Centipede is a very phosphorus unfriendly turf, right? It does not enjoy phosphorus. So you can join. Tell her to come on. Grab her. Throw her a microphone.
Hmm.
Just give me a beer.
Yeah.
Oh, how nice.
Kentucky.
How nice.
So it and for those people that don't know, we'll kind of go ahead and throw this out there. If you do not know what the MLSN is, type it in. It was a joint project between Pace Turf and Michael Woods, right? And
That sounded good.
and so Jay Pink threw the link in there, so you can go check it out there. And basically, what they did is they conducted, was it thousands of surveys across the United
17
States.
So they took 17,000 soil test records, right? 17,000 plus, and ran like a
It was-
regression analysis to identify like not the bottom 10%, but to find good performing turf and then a smaller subset of those. And I'm not a stats major, but I'll just stop right there. I'm not
It
gonna go
was
into
a
stats.
massive outreach to aggregate a bunch of data from soil test and turf quality, or maybe not even turf
Yes.
quality, playability.
Turf quality. They
Maybe
just
a
said
more
good turf is what they said.
good turf,
Good turf.
right? So
And this was all superintendents, so you're going to get a range there, but not too far down the wormhole. But go ahead. Sorry.
they're not out there with NDVI meters on every one of these 17,000, equating a measured a precise, accurate reference number to each one. But it's saying, do you have good turf quality, and then correlating that to the values in the soil test to be able to put together this idea of generating the absolute floor levels of specific nutrients, at least the most critical nutrients in terms of turf grass performance. And they, and they're doing this off our macronutrients, right? So potassium, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur as sulfate, and of course your soil pH, right? And so that became, or I would still say it is still extremely controversial in the professional turfgrass market. I would say this is not widely accepted. I think it is. I think it's on the upper echelon of fringe, right, where it's not like outer space fringe. But it's funny, every time I see Michael Woods make a post on not every time, but I still see people subtweet Michael Woods, or quote tweet him and get into these diatribes about how out there he is for suggesting things like MLSN, or especially when he dives into things like aerification. It gets real bizarre out into the weeds there. But from my perspective, all of this is great, right? Because this is refreshing research, right? And it's something that it's a continued push towards the evolution of the industry, right? Especially in a time when all eyes are on the industry in a mostly in a negative light, greater than 50% in a negative light. When all eyes are on the industry, there are people out there that are working towards quantifying how we can do more with less. And then, of course, you've got the economics of it as well, too, right? More golf courses are on tighter budgets. How are you going to get the same level of playability on a lower budget? Am I missing anything here?
No, I think it's, and I know where both you guys stand on this for the most part, right? And it's certainly not something that, like what you were saying, Matt, that you need to manage to that number. It is more of the guardrail, like on the low end of you need to be careful if you get, near or definitely below these, right? It's trying to understand that. And I don't know many situations, maybe some low P that we've seen in all the soil tests that we've looked at this year, but certainly like the situations where you're near those, right? In a lot of cases, just I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but it's not typical, right? And in my case, right, of looking at scale, it's certainly something that we're always looking at, right? Of what's the least amount of inputs that we need to get the output that we want. I mean, that should be anybody's chief goal with turf. And I understand, like, if we put more down, then we should have more positive results. And that, I've learned that, and I'm sure Ray, you have too, right? That we've talked about luxury consumption sometimes of certain nutrients, but even beyond that, there is a point of diminishing returns, and it's species specific, it's environmentally specific, and there's a lot of different things, different variables that factor in here to just make blanket statements of you should apply X, Y, or Z to your turf, right?
Right. And I'm not sure I'm even, I should even be talking because I maintain an entirely different type of turf that I don't know. How well does what I do translate to full season turf?
Well,
Um,
I think
maybe
some of
maybe
it,
in northern Minnesota,
yeah, where it's the same growth pattern, right?
Canada,
Yeah,
a bud.
yeah.
Ray's got
Because
maple syrup out there.
yeah, imported from Canada. But seriously, uh, low input turf is something that not on purpose and not because of any kind of a mandate, I've had to adopt because resources are scarce. And I'm always thinking, what is the actual footprint of this turf grass area? Because I see time and time again here, where I'm at, a lot of lawns and landscapes are maintained with an outsized footprint,
Mm.
you know, and you know what I'm talking about by an outsized footprint, Ryan? Not
Lay it
only
on. Go ahead.
not only are those lawns and landscapes highly consumptive of, materials,
Mm.
they need so much other inputs that, Matt doesn't think about because, for example, hell, in Tennessee, I know for a fact you're allowed to push brush to the far corner of the property and light it. I can't do that. Don't burn your
Now,
shit down.
Ray,
yeah, don't do that.
Ray,
Don't do that.
you can burn your house down around here, and
Mhm.
it's perfectly socially acceptable.
That's why they got the fire department out there, just to keep people from not doing stupid shit, but from getting them back to doing stupid shit quicker. It's really what it's all about. So Greg, let's talk about your situation. What you went down this wormhole. So how? Okay, my question is this: you learn, and then how do you compress this and actually put it into practice? Like, what have you done? What have you taken away from all of your research and study so
He just
far.
good, very
He
great question.
froze.
Yeah,
Look at that. He looks like he has to poop.
yep.
I hope
That's
he
a-
didn't. No,
It's a man of all seriousness right there. Look out.
seriously, we need a
This
screenshot of
some
that.
bitchin' internet connection is gonna kill me.
If that internet
If
connection's
only-
name was
Steve Willie just commented that he got broke into recently. His trailer's gone, 2 leaf blowers, a pressure washer, a John Deere mower, weed eater, etc. Steve, did they get your slit seeder? He's got an OG Lesco slit seeder.
oh boy.
Steve,
Oh,
man, I
man.
hate that for you. They already stripped he had an old permagreen that he used for parts, and they stripped the motor off of it not too long ago. What's going on
Gosh.
in East Tennessee? This is up in Gillespie's land up here. You know where he is? He's in Jay City area.
They probably, you know what they did? They took all that stuff, they went and fenced it all, and you know what they did? They took all that cash, went down to the fuzzy hole, had themselves a real good time.
Now, I
don't
think
think it's e-
Steve is
I don't
part
think they even
owner
have-
of that.
He's the part owner of Fuzzy
I don't
Hole.
I think so.
I don't think it's
Now
a
that's-
matter of even the fuzzy hole. I think they didn't even have a good time because you know what a trailer full of
You
lawn
want-
equipment is?
Oh, I don't know, but are you going to say that they got a trailer
Traceable?
haul and they went?
No, no, once you scrub off all the serial numbers, I call that about a week or two worth of mess. Pieces of crap.
Yeah.
All of them.
I
Pieces
thought
of crap.
that I thought they might have went into the back, into the secret part of the Fuzzy Hole. It's like the after hours club back there. Now that one's called the Stinky Tickle. And if you make it back there,
Mhm.
well, you're going to need a couple extra pressure washers and blowers and all that kind of stuff to have a good time there. You're
Oh,
back.
He's back.
Oh wait, he's in.
Oh,
he's
I was
not.
just kidding.
He went away.
Just kidding.
Now he's
Okay,
back.
he's back.
He's
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 back.
in a different room. Blink
He had
once
to
if you're
re-engineer
safe.
his network.
Oh, he's
Still-
getting connected.
Still not live. He is re-engineering as quick as possible. He is working the keyboard like no other programmer has ever worked the keyboard. That's what happens when you run
Change
Linux.
laptops. Much better.
Are
Look
you,
at
are you
this.
running Linux? Is that the problem?
No, I used to.
This guy right here. This guy right
Ubuntu
here.
Linux.
No, I don't run Linux. I run Ubuntu. Who is
Oh,
it?
man.
Gibby told me I needed to run Ubuntu, and so I created this partition and got it fired up. And then I realized like you have to load each individual driver you need, and
Yep.
I do a lot of my day job in the Adobe Creative Cloud, and I'm like, well, this is not supported by Linux, and he's like, yeah, but there's all these alternatives. You start messing around with these alternatives, you got to learn all new software. I'm like, I'm going back to Windows. Now I'm on Windows 11 though, so cool, right?
All right,
Let
so
that be
I
my
just
birthday.
asked an incisive and wonderful question, Greg, and then you froze, and we weren't sure what happened. So I'll go back to it and say, you study this, you research everything, and now you've got to apply your knowledge. Like, so what have you actually taken away and done so far, in terms of putting some of these things into practice in your lawn? Or are you still in that learning phase?
I'm still in the learning phase. Like I said, this is my third season now. And it's a lot of trial, a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors. So as far as like application or doing anything in my lawn, it's still a lot of trial. Like I've made mistakes. I've tried to identify different grasses like bent grass, quackgrass.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to get like the nitrogen rates down. How much nitrogen should I apply? At what time of the year? At what rates? That's still kind of a learning process, and I'm getting a better handle of it. But yeah, I would say I'm still in the learning phase. But the honeymoon phase is kind of over a little bit. Right now, I'm not looking for a showcase lawn. I'm not looking not to like dominate my neighbor. Sorry, neighborhood dominator. But
That position's been
it's
filled.
just
I'm
not my
sorry.
thing. Yeah, I know. I can't take that. No, I just
So
want a functional lawn,
okay,
where it's thick, dense, mostly weed free. Just something I can enjoy and my kids can enjoy, and that's about it.
You talked
well, that's
about
good.
nitrogen management and that
Yep.
being a bit of a chore, I guess is how I'll phrase that. What to this point has made that piece particularly a chore?
Just trying to figure out. So my house was built in '91, so grass has been grown on this soil for 30 years now. So there's a lot of organic matter that possibly has been built up. But then again, I don't know how it's been maintained because I moved into this house 3 years ago. And the backyard, it was a mess. The backyard was thin, it was weedy, it was a mess. The front lawn, it looks like they were taking care of it a little more. But I don't think they had a lawn care service. Anybody previously that lived in my house had a lawn care service for a long time. But like I remember Doug saying, like if you have a turf grass that's been maintained for like at least 15 years, you can dial back, or even 10 years, you can dial back that nitrogen rate because a lot of that organic matter has been built up, and you can pull a lot of that nitrogen from that organic matter. Um, but I noticed like in the front, I can maintain a pretty good dense turf grass at about a little over 2 pounds of N annually. In the backyard, I try to play around with that rate as well, and it did not stay thick. It's still pretty weedy in the back. I mean, it looks okay there, but I still got wild violet. I still get clover. I still get nutsedge. I still get a little bit of crabgrass, but I controlled a lot of that with prodiamine. Some applications for about, I think it's been 2 years now, and I don't get as much crabgrass anymore. But the back's been a challenge a little bit, but I also get more traffic back there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a previous picture. You can kind of see that mole right there at the top. I could talk a little bit more about that, but it was that actually is a pretty decent picture. It was worse than that. I think that was like about a year after I moved in.
What kind of grass do you have?
It's mainly Kentucky bluegrass. There's some fine fescue in there, and probably a little bit of perennial
Mhm.
ryegrass as well.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it's a mix. It's, I guess, what they call a Heinz 57. I've heard that term before.
Yep.
So it's just a salad bar. It's common type Kentucky bluegrass. There's really not any improved cultivars in there. But I did oversee this fall, so what did come up would be incorporated in what I already had.
What did you overseed with?
I did MVS 365 SS.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
But I
Those are
think I
good
did it too
cultivars.
early. I did it early August. I think it was August 11th. I
No,
overseed
you're
it,
fine.
and it was still
You're fine.
okay.
You're fine.
And I think I watered. It was about three times a day for about. I got an in-ground sprinkler system put in, so about each zone ran for about 8 to 9 minutes, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, in those situations when you're overseeding or interseeding right into an existing
Yeah,
lawn, especially in cool season, there's some certain tricks you can use. I mean, one is not necessarily scalping it at that time of the year. I'm not a proponent of that, but you can mow it a little bit lower and try to increase sunlight down in the soil and all that jazz. I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, the one thing that Ray, can't really do it in warm season necessarily, but you trick the grass a little bit and high rates of growth regulator, right, to slow down your existing grass and create a window of competition or lack of competition, I should say, with
Actually,
that existing turf.
Ryan, I would probably
Yes.
do one worse. I'd probably do one worse than a growth regulator.
What would you do?
I'd probably perform a top kill. I'd
Well,
perform a
if
top
you don't
kill.
have that option, right,
Mm-hmm.
other tools. So okay,
Yeah.
so something like Primo Max.
yep, Primo Max or
Yep.
15x any of the other generic or post patent PGRs in that class would be perfect. So absolutely. So and the nice thing there is that you get that stuff up and going, and hopefully you get a mow-in or something like that on that stuff. And 365 is quick to come up. Like if you're watering it and you've gotten good seed
7
to soil
days.
contact, 7 days you're up, you're going. Now it's going to sit there and not do a whole lot for a couple of weeks, but from there forward, you can either reapply, your growth regulator again, and you're not going to see a whole lot of impact necessarily on seedling. There's a lot of research out there that suggests that the impact of growth regulators on seedlings is negligible in terms of their overall development. You just got to be careful on your rates. That's about the only thing. So I think it's a good plan to continue to try and introduce those cultivars. Is there anything stopping you from doing what Ray said? Just pulling the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, it's burning it down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually,
I'm impatient. Kentucky bluegrass just takes way too long to look nice. I mean, I
Ryan?
looked at
when
Go
I
ahead,
said
Ray.
top kill, I don't mean with glyphosate.
What do you mean?
I just mean a contact non-systemic herbicide that leaves the root system intact, and you just interseed.
Oh, so we're talking
Yeah.
finale.
Daiquat.
Daiquat could do it.
Daiquat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Daiquat.
I'll take.
I mean,
that's
yeah. I mean, Daiquat is not for the faint of heart, although it's extremely effective and economical.
Greg, are you done having children?
yes, it's physically impossible.
Well, we're about to make it chemically impossible too. Let's go with the top kill.
But
All right. Go ahead, Ray.
but that's just yet another option. Like if you have a dense stand of grass and you want to interseed into it, just brown it out for a month, and that's your time window to establish something more desirable in it.
It's kind of like seeding. I think about it when Ray, you saw around here how much Bermuda just grows into fescue, right? And there's
And
no
just
real
becomes a
defined
contaminant.
line between. It's
it
just
becomes
this interspersed mess, right? And it made it so much easier when you're reestablishing fescue in those areas to put down an HPPD inhibitor like Pilex, right? To really knock back that Bermuda, seed your tall fescue into it, give it the opportunity to establish and fill in those areas that are predominantly Bermuda that are fully dormant in the winter, right? And so kind of in effect the same thing by using the Daiquat, right, where you're literally just knocking everything back and giving it enough of a time window there. You're not going to kill it, but you're going to knock it back hard enough and strong enough that you'll give you'll give enough of an opportunity for whatever you see to establish. It is still, the difficulty in that would be rate control, right? You have to make a very, very precise application where if you're overlapping too much one way or another, that can lead to some issues. That could lead to some legit death that occurs. So if you feel completely confident in your spraying ability, you're okay that if you overlap a little bit of an area too much and some death does occur, it may make sense. If you're not confident in that space, then and you're not okay with it if some death does occur, then it may not be for you, right? But it's an option that you can employ. A bit of a trick, right? It's just a tool in the toolbox, right? That you can go out there with and hopefully have the opportunity to have a greater concentration of the newer cultivars into your lawn.
Now, is this something I can get on like domyown.com in smaller amounts?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, it's not restricted use, and it's sold in quantities as small as 1 quart. And your actual usage rate for a burn down prior to interseeding, I'm thinking that would be equivalent to no more than 1 to 2 teaspoons of material per 1,000 square foot. It doesn't take a lot at all. And at
Yeah,
that
so we're
rate,
talking
you mitigate
0.16 ounces.
Yeah, and at that rate, you mitigate the possibility of it going too far and killing everything, because dicot is very rate dependent. A little makes leaves crispy. A lot is just bhopal.
Oops.
It's a chemical disaster in India that took place at a was that a-
Massive loss of
what,
life.
what plant was that? The Union Carbide plant?
Union Carbide. Yeah, Union Carbide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
One of the worst
But
industrial disasters in history.
yeah, that was like, I think, the worst chemical accident that ever happened in the world to date.
And that's only the ones
anyway-
they told you that died, right? I mean, that's okay. These are here nor there.
Yeah, but we digress. But to get your existing stand of turf suppressed, that's just one way of doing it. Other way to do it is actual scalping. I mean, and here's where it's a little different for me, because my idea of a scalp is not the lowest notch on the rotary mower. My idea of a scalp is, I don't call it a scalp until I almost or actually do see dirt. That's what I call a scalp,
Right.
Ryan.
That's
a hard
something.
cut. And you hear another
It's a hard- it's a-
terminology.
Oh yeah, there's some hard cutting going on sometimes. God. I always push back a little bit on the myth. I don't want to say it's a myth that, bluegrass is slow to establish. I think a lot of it depends on the methods that you use during establishment, right? So when you're seeding it and how you're covering it and everything like that, if you're covering it and how that all goes, because doing projects all the time, and you can see there's a definite difference. It's the one grass that I can definitively say that, like ryegrass, you can grow it on concrete if you need to. Bermuda grass does all the work for you. Like, there's a whole bunch of built-in hacks, so to speak, just by species selection. But with bluegrass, like all those little details get magnified if you want to get it up and going. And so, like, there's situations here. I'll show some pictures here, and it's just showing you what's possible, right? If you can commit to doing it the right way. And yeah, I think I wouldn't be too worried about the whole timing aspect of things. Like that's not that big of a deal. Where are we still on here?
Is this thing on?
Is this thing on? I'm gonna.
I was waiting to see what you were pulling up.
We're waiting on you, Ryan.
I'm waiting on. All right, I'm waiting on myself then. Hang on. Let me send this over. I didn't realize I was waiting in suspense. I should have. That was not a very good transition.
Greg, are you into wild ass experimentation?
Probably not. I like tried and true principles. So I usually don't go to any sort of extreme or anything like that.
Do you have an
So
engineering
just
degree?
basic agronomic principles. What's that?
Do you have an engineering degree?
Well, I'm in. So I have what's called a CCNP. So it's Cisco cert.
Okay.
But I did not go to school for networking.
Interesting.
Okay.
Just wondering. Most people I know that are extremely risk adverse are typically engineers. I think of my dad, right? My dad is the most risk adverse human you've ever come across. He's an electrical engineer. That's why I just asked. I was curious.
Yeah, I typically play it safe. Even at my job too, I'm pretty conservative.
No, I'm full throttle wild ass open. I mean, I burned a
Same.
building down in my house. Like, you know, ooh, what do we got here?
I heard
Yes.
about
For
that.
fun.
I
For
did hear
fun.
that story.
For fun.
Well,
Just, nice little Tuesday.
for me, I wouldn't call myself, how shall I say, wild, but risks and possibilities are thoroughly calculated before I take action. In other words, I know what's going to happen before I actually do it.
That's a good way to live.
I mean, that's just how I work. I mean, so don't mind me if it seems like a lot of the stuff that I do is just nuts, because what that is that I've calculated it out and I've figured it out.
J
What are we
Pink.
looking at here, DeMay?
Oh yeah, so this is Kentucky bluegrass. I'm sorry, I was just clicking back over this window. This is bluegrass. Now a couple of things here that are really important to note, right? So this is what do you think here? About 20 days, something like that, 19, 20 days. And a couple of things here. You've got hydro mulch over top of the seed, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, absolutely seen this in a number of different settings and scenarios that it's a crucial step towards not only early germination but also quicker establishment. Purely anecdotal, turf truth. If you want to slice me and dice me, then go ahead. This is the same set of fields here. This is at day 57 or so, 58, something like that. So again, it's completely possible. There's no tricks here or anything like that. This is just basic agronomy. Only granular fertilizer, not spraying anything funky or anything like that. Pretty decent weather overall. Not too hot, not too cold, all that kind of stuff. But seeded early too. So about the same time that you seeded yours, Greg, in mid-August. So again, I like to push back a little bit on that notion. I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying in general that bluegrass is slow and bluegrass is it'll do a lot for you if you take the right steps. It's just a little bit prissy up front. You got to treat it right. So that's my message there. So are you interested in, because I think you mentioned, don't you have some weed issues, some grassy weed issues that you were, I thought something that came over about that.
Yeah, I've been battling that for a little while. So I had bank grass in my backyard. I don't know if I uploaded that picture or not, but it's just, you could tell like in the mornings when there's dew on the grass, it's got that
Yep.
light green color. Yeah, right there. So I didn't know what that was at first. I didn't know if it's nimblewill or bent grass. I think Matt, you said something about not using tenacity, but going the glyphosate route. So that's what I did. Is I used glyphosate and I killed off those spots, and I reseeded. And I think I did that. I think it was a year ago, last fall, is when I reseeded, and it came up okay. I think I used like a Scotch or something like that, and it wasn't. I should have waited until it, tilled out and that, but it wasn't coming in as much as I thought it would come in. So then I dormant seeded with some cheap Menards Kentucky bluegrass, which was a mistake because it's freaking super stocky, and it was just not looking good at all. But this year it doesn't look too bad. But I got rid of most of the bent grass.
Has the bent grass come back?
In its spots this year, it did. So in the small spots, it did come up or did come back. I did use tenacity, and I think I sprayed it 3 times. The third time was the max annual rate. So I didn't go over that. So I sprayed it 3 times. I think it was like a week or 2 apart. I can't remember. I think it was a week apart. That seemed to work.
So is what's interesting. I have never had success with Pilex or Tenacity on bent grass.
What?
Good, yeah, I'm
Oh
telling you.
wait, now I'm gonna pull up some photos, Matt Martin. I'm gonna show you some now lasting results. That you got to keep your foot on the gas. I'll give you that. Go on.
Ryan, didn't you say 4 applications you would
5,
do? I think you.
5,
Oh, 5.
5 at
Okay.
Okay,
5 at
well
3.2 fluid ounces per acre.
my point is next year coming back is where I was going with that.
Yeah, you got to be ready to go.
My thought was
Zapow.
my thought was like it's a bit like trying to manage Bermuda in a cool season grass, right? Like if you get on the Pilex program, you're on the Pilex program for a minimum of 3 years, right? Just write it into the books, understand what you're stepping into. Bermuda grass is a 3-year program. I guess what I'm asking is bent grass the same thing?
A 3-year program?
Mm-hmm.
Does not have to be a 3-year program. It just depends on how far and how hard you're willing to go in the paint here. I'm going to see if I can find real quick. Oh, here you go. Here's a good one. This one. These aren't great pictures. Oh, here's a good one. This field is hammered. And then I'm going to send this.
Yeah, it's just
You
I,
take a
I
look.
don't I don't know why, but it's been a struggle at least. I wonder too if does it have to do with our growing conditions down here? I don't know. I can see this picture here before it's come up, and I'm telling you, Demay, never have I seen tenacity. Maybe by the third application, but again, also I've never seen bent grass that dense in a property either. I mean, that is
Yeah,
like
it's pretty bad. It's all over
that's
the
a
place.
lot of bent grass.
Yes, it is.
Is this what yours look like after your third application, Greg?
Honestly, I don't remember. It looked like it killed all of it. It
Yeah, I
turned
mean,
it turned yellow and it was gone. And then Kentucky bluegrass, I'm pretty sure it just filled in. But we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see next year, though.
I'd be curious, and I'll tell you, I talked to another guy in North Carolina one time that was explaining to me the situation he ran into with bent grass, and it was much the same where he sold the job, and he did 3 applications or something like that of tenacity, and it came back the next year, and I remember him up in arms because his customer was ready to kick his ass, absolutely kick his ass, because of the resurgence of the bent grass. I was like, damn, man, same thing happened to me. I used to have these lakefront properties, and always along the lake, for whatever reason, there would be little patches of bent grass that would move in there, and I could nail them with whatever. I could discolor the hell out of it. I could make them look as dead as they wanted to be, but until I caught it with a fall application of glyphosate, chances are I wasn't going to get rid of it with any of the applications I was making for whatever reason. I don't know. It could have been applicator error too. I mean, that's always a real possibility. But that was
Well,
interesting. Ray, have you ever had to kill bent grass as a weed in Hawaii? Curious.
no, I haven't. I haven't. But to me, with the way that people up north talk about bent grass, it kind of reminds me of what I have to go through to kill zoysia.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can see
because
where that would be an absolute chore.
like I call zoysia the zombie grass, and I'm going through this right now because one of my customers decided that there's a certain area that he previously had sodded with Xeon zoysia that he now wants to re-landscape that with ground covers and shrubs and stepping stones. And guess what I'm doing with his right now? Glyphosate and Pilex.
Giving it the hot wallop.
And like last Friday was literally his second or third application in that area, and I'm glad I saw it because at looking at it from afar, it looked like it was turning brown, but then I showed him, I said, "Hey, wait a minute, man. I see little green leaves coming up from underneath, Matt. Little green leaves of the zoysia coming up from underneath." I said, "You know what? This is not done yet. And if you were to have this re-landscape, all this would grow back and contaminate your new landscaping, and I'd have a devil of a time trying to selectively kill it."
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's nothing fun about going after it's much the same way. Nothing fun really about going after bent grass. Let me ask, Greg,
However,
do you go ahead? Go ahead.
However, the way I would approach bent grass in a cool season turf is I would deliberately apply a lot of the things that you're not supposed to do to bent grass. Like in the fall, late summer, early fall, I'd be subjecting it to repeated rounds of tenacity plus 2,4-D plus triclopyr
Yeah, that's
on
what
purpose.
I was gonna say. There is with the wild violet presence, right?
Mhm.
Kind of knock out two birds with one stone, where you can get down, triclopyr
Mm,
at will, and and if it's only going to help with that kind of tank mix companion there of 2,4-D, triclopyr, and tenacity. I mean,
mhm.
that's kind of a win-win, right? Because you got wild
That's what
violet
I did.
control.
Actually, I left
Yeah,
out the 2,4-D, but I did use triclopyr ester with tenacity.
very good,
Okay,
It
very
seemed to
good.
help with the
very
wild
good.
violet, but that wild violet's a bastard. It keeps coming back. It's been 3 years
Here's
now,
the
and I still haven't totally killed it all.
here's the thing is we're talking about weeds with an extensive root system. I'm also speaking to bentgrass, and your your word is going to be persistence. In other words, I think you're going to have to commit to outlasting that that bent grass and that wild violet. And as I said, if that were me faced with that kind of contamination of my KBG, it would be getting 2,4-D triclopyr and either Pilex or tenacity every single fall, and in the springtime, uh, I would be running triclopyr and the tenacity or Pilex in the spring as well. And by the way, if you're on such a program, I highly doubt you're going to have a grassy weed or broadleaf weed issue because, true or false, that kind of a herbicide mix is basically yes to a lot of your common lawn weeds.
It is, but if I recall correctly, do you deal with quackgrass?
Yes.
Okay,
I have some in my
here's what.
backyard, and I did use glyphosate to kill that off.
Mhm.
Okay, so and it's done now. Like you're not having to deal with that anymore.
Uh, so I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was like a bunching tall fescue type.
Hmm.
And so I did post something on Instagram, and someone did mention that it's probably quackgrass, and I kind of had that same idea as well. So I did a little bit of research, and I know Doug Soldat talked about it on one of his YouTube presentations. And there's a few ways you can go at it. I One was like the black plastic. The other was to quackgrass doesn't like to be mowed short. So you
Mhm.
could mow it short and you could suppress it, but it would take years to do. He said like, oh, you could do it for 5 years, mow it short in that area, and then it would slowly get rid of the quackgrass because it doesn't like that. The more invasive way to do it would be glyphosate, and just keep at it because it's going to come back. Spray it again. It's going to come back. Spray it again because it does have that extensive root system. So I did spray it I think twice with glyphosate, and I still have those um, dead spots in my lawn right now. I got a few of them where the bent grass was and the quack grass. And so now I plan on dormant seeding. Now, I feel like that's kind of the only option I have right now, or wait till spring, I guess. But I'm going to try dormant seeding. Just basically rake it in, rake the seed in, and put compost over it and see what happens in the spring.
Yeah,
But I haven't done
I'm
that
not
yet, so I'm
aware.
open to options.
Well, any kind of selective herbicide control for quackgrass is going to be experimental at best, right? And it'd be a pretty arduous. Well, I think it's. Are you? Is your mic off, Ryan? It may be off. Are y'all familiar with any selective weed controls? I mean, I'm thinking like a fluazafop kind of experiment.
Actually, the the one that I've heard of.
Now you're off, Ryan. I'm sorry. You may have
Yeah.
been on, and then I had you turn it off. That's my fault.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The one that I heard of is
I'm here.
repeated applications of something called phenoxaprop, which is
Claim.
also known acclaim. And the reason why I bring up acclaim is because acclaim is usable on KBG. KBG is tolerant. And the reason why I bring this up is I've heard of people not identifying their turf grass correctly and applying fluazafop to their KBG or other cool season grass and finding out exactly how much of their lawn was that other type of cool season grass. Whereas if you do that with that Acclaim Extra is far more selective. Unfortunately, Acclaim Extra is also far more expensive. I'm talking, approximately $100 for 16 ounces. And your use rate on that is 16 ounces per acre per application.
Yeah, the glyphosate method, while it is painful, is worth it. The other thing that I always recommend to folks, if you can, if you know you have that issue, right, is a couple ways you can do it is make yourself a tiny little sod nursery that you can plug out of, like in a deep corner of your lawn, and hide it, screen it out, landscaping, whatever you want to do, or simply take and remove those spots. And I don't know how widespread yours was, but take and remove those spots and stick them in the far corner of the lawn, and then either glyphosate them or play around with your herbicides over there, right in the deep corner where they're all kind of buried and stuck, back in the holes that you've pulled, desirable turf from. So another option, right, so that you're not having to, just get rid of those small circular spots where you had to spray glyphosate and kill it off like that. So again, just another little management tip if you're looking to get rid of that stuff, because it's a pain in the ass, and it does not allow for any good selective control other than mechanical means, or that's it really.
Right, Ryan.
Acclaim drives me crazy because it used to work phenomenally. And I feel like
Mhm.
the efficacy of Acclaim is a fraction of what it once was.
You know
And
what
that's
I think
even on
happened?
Quinclorac,
what?
I mean,
You're
same
right.
thing.
Yeah.
You know what I think happened? I think at one time everybody got lazy and they thought they could control their crabgrass by spot spraying Acclaim or spot spraying quinclorac even. But here's where it goes sideways. A lot of these spot spray mixes were probably not even formulated to my standards. In other words, I know a lot of lawn guys that they cheat on even their surfactant selection. And when you cheat on your surfactant selection, when you're dealing with the likes of quinclorac or Acclaim, then that product doesn't work as well as it ought to. And you know when it doesn't work as well as it ought to? Here's what happens. You give rise to a generation of weed that was exposed to a less than lethal application. That weed can then either set seed or overwinter and then become the majority of the population in that neighborhood, never mind the entire state, never mind the entire country.
Demay,
Red-
let me ask you this. Have you heard of people managing golf greens with post-only programs in your area on bent grass and only running Acclaim? Because that is a thing that I heard about for the first time in actually it was at a golf course in Kentucky and talking to the super there, and he was doing like 6 apps of Acclaim a year as a post-only program to manage his greens.
I've seen it
Crabgrass and
before.
goosegrass. Yeah.
It was like
Seen it before.
Primo and Acclaim was like the only thing that was going down on it.
I wouldn't recommend it. I mean,
And he was starving the absolute hell out of them to try and manage the POA.
No.
in Kentucky.
Yikes.
Yeah, this is in Louisville.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. That's
Yeah.
that hurts my head to think about for a second there.
I'm cringing. I'm cringing.
Yeah. Well, and you got to be careful with the claim on bent because, like, sometimes she can get a little feisty. She can get a little,
my understanding of Acclaim is that tolerance of bent to Acclaim is marginal at best.
I would say it's just finicky. It's finicky. And you know what, Ray? Here's the thing about the golf course, right? You get to burn and return, right? You don't have to look her in the face for days, maybe weeks, right?
Mhm.
I got to go in there and look at that every day. And that's hard. It's hard. And then everybody's looking at you because they know it's awkward because you dinged it all up. And, like, it's a different thing.
Trust me. It's good. Trust me.
It's yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? and you know what? You know what makes it far worse is that at that low rate, Acclaim isn't even that effective. So, to be honest with you, if somebody came to me and said that they had quackgrass, do you know what I tell them to do? Start mowing their turf short, number one, and then in between mowings, let that quackgrass stick up above their desirable lawn grass and do another green dock on them. Concentrated glyphosate on a paintbrush.
I'll take you one
Wicket.
better way. I'm gonna take it. I'll take it even one higher, right? If it's widespread. Have you ever seen a weed wick before, Ray?
Actually, one of my friends at University of Hawaii has been messing around with this wiper bar that is pressure fed, and he's wicking on 30% glyphosate. And the target of that is all your various tall growing weeds in fairways.
I like it. I'm gonna send this to J Pink real quick. Go ahead, keep going.
But then But then that's probably like my other avenue as far as going after quackgrass is why not let it grow up, above your desirable turf, and then white or contact concentrated glyphosate onto that.
Can. I mean, you
Yeah,
absolutely
I mean
can.
that's
The other
just
thing, yeah, it's all good. Wait, let me see here. What? Oh, J-Ping, throw this picture up real
Throw-
quick.
Yeah,
If you have a
throw
moment.
that up. This is a weed wick, and this may be a good option for you. Have you ever seen a
This is
weed
a
wick, Greg?
dauber. Weed wick is different.
Yeah,
I'll show
I've
you
not.
this
weed
is a
wick.
dauber. Yeah,
Yeah, the old
dauber looks
dauber.
more like a wick looks more like a hockey stick.
Yeah, and you can get bigger ones. Weed wick applicator. Where are we at here? Just yeah, you get a little
I've
bit
even
out.
seen ones that were intended to be towed behind,
Yes,
golf
these are on
carts and
sod.
tractors, right?
Yeah, so
Right?
those are widely used on sod farms, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I got the idea from originally. Was so what they'll do, Ray, is these fields are getting planted once every 12 to 18 months, right? And so there's
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of grassy weed pressure in these. There you go. Get you a little pinpoint. There's the dauber, right? Let me send
Mm-hmm.
this one real quick. Here's a little guy, weed wick. Look at this.
That's
So you're
perfect.
pumping. Yeah. And you just drag that rope. That rope goes into this little chamber right here. It's got Roundup or whatever you want to have, whatever your active ingredient you want to have in there. And then you drag that across the turf when the rope has soaked it up. And it's a pretty handy dandy application method. So, all that said, quackgrass is no fun to deal with. It's just not. And, because of its extensive, extensive rhizomes, you're going to always run into these issues where no matter what you try to do, it's still going to continue to pop back up. So I think it's going to be more of a management thing, unless you kill it next spring and let it follow for the entire summer, and then you come back and you grow the best Kentucky bluegrass lawn in all of across Wisconsin. It's beautiful.
May.
Maybe have Bob Ross's spirit come out and put some happy little clouds over your house. It's everything you want and more, right?
Yeah,
Hey Ray,
Greg, we're
real
trying
quick.
to take you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
we're trying to completely indoctrinate you so that you go way further beyond. We're trying to be your enablers here, right? That's really what we're here to do. This isn't an intervention. This is quite the opposite. We would like you to increase your use of intravenous turf drugs like Kentucky bluegrass, like glyphosate, and other assorted chemicals, fertilizers, and turf products. So
Actually,
Fine with that. It's a backyard. I don't care.
there's a bunch of people here that
Actually-
love you, and we really want to see you get all fucked up on this shit.
Actually, I'm going to be even worse in that. How much? You said you had about 3/4 of an acre of.
No, that was the
Wha-
first house I lived in. The current house I live, I have 5,500 square feet.
5,500 square feet. Oh, okay. Do you know what a
The
5,500
grass that I
square
had
foot?
wasn't much.
Okay, but you know what a 5,500 square foot lawn sounds like to me?
A test plot.
Sounds to me like that's a GM 1000 size.
Oh, here we go.
I knew it, and I was gonna go this way. Have you considered going real low, Greg? Are you gonna bust out the greens mower and take this to the next level?
I'm not. I don't plan to real mow.
All right.
Well,
Okay.
That's
And-
what I'm
and-
using.
Thank you.
That's what I'll be using for
Okay.
a while.
Okay, and the reason why I've even gone there is I have a certain understanding regarding weed pressure and height of cut. And it is actually opposite of what everybody's been told, according to the mass media. And the reason why is because if you try to make that, nice push rotary mower mow low, you're tearing and gouging out the turf grass, right? when you mow low with a real mower, you're not gouging, you're not tearing, you're finely trimming the grass straight across the tops without that tearing or ripping action. And by doing that, you are actually encouraging turf grass density. Because I remember when you first got on, you just want your grass dense. And to me, there comes a point when a rotary mower is not my friend if I want a lawn to be dense and to, bury weeds. I mean, because a lot of people have mean things to say about things like Bermuda grass and the various other warm season grasses. But I think of it more as, for example, a management issue in that do not cast aspersions at the turf that you're not going to mow optimally.
I'm gonna agree with
And
that.
in the case of
Yeah,
case of Kentucky bluegrass, I keep on joking with these guys in that, and I tell them, should I ever end up in a region where I can grow it, I'm going to have a Kentucky blue or all bent lawn, and it's going to be mowed at a half an inch.
The only problem I
Greg,
see with that,
go
not
ahead.
on what you said, but as far as management, now I got to be real mowing this thing every 1 to 2 days. I don't know much about real mowing except what I've seen on the
You
YouTubes,
don't
but
you don't have to be mowing it once every 1 to 2 days, because anybody that has that experience real mowing, my guess is they are mismanaging their nitrogen, actually. In
if you're
that
talking like low doses, spread out, small rates,
lower rates,
uh,
a little
PGRs
more
potential.
PGRs potentially, but then your first lever that you should be pulling is your nitrogen rates. In that, somebody that tells me that they have difficulty keeping up with reel cutting, I then look at their nutrient program, and the nutrient program that they're following is more appropriate for what I call a hay field. Because, like, I can tell you on, for example, a golf green and a golf tee, where those are, mowed low, the superintendent is not throwing down a pound of nitrogen every month. That's not happening. That superintendent is probably applying fractional rates of nitrogen, like 1/10 to 2/10 of a pound of N per application, spaced out to the proper times of the year, such that the grass, can utilize it optimally according to the climatic conditions at that time. So, because even for myself, if I were to ever throw down 1 pound of nitrogen on the kinds of turf that I take care of, I would have extreme difficulty keeping up with mowing. And that's even with a PGR in place.
Now you're talking like water soluble. Would you put down a pound, say of like maybe not 100%, but 80%, something like a polymer sulfur coated urea?
Not even that. Not even that.
No, that's
I'm
a
talking.
totally different kind of
Yeah.
approach there. So Ray's only talking about purely water soluble sources, right? So, but even doing a pound of something like a PCSEU, you're only extending it to 45 days, maybe 60, depending on your temperature. So, now you're going to be closer to a pound that's going to be delivered over a month and a half versus something that's going to give you a response for about a month, right? So you're not really extending it that far into it, right? So I can see where a pound for someone like Ray in an intensive management type of situation, even as a PCSU, wouldn't be all that fun, especially at the height of cuts he's talking about. It would be the probability of injuring those prills and causing them to dump would be relatively high as well.
Because when you're talking about real cut grass, understand that in most cases, that turf grass becomes so dense, you no longer see soil. You can't even part the grass with your fingers to see soil. It fills in that densely. And so if you do throw something like PCSU or SCU or any kind of a polycoat fertilizer, all of those prills are going to be sitting on top of the grass where the next time you cut grass, you're also going to be cutting open those prills and we're off to the races because your fertilizer is no longer slow release because you just cut open that timed release coating.
I was thinking more of like fairways.
Even on fairways, on fairways, those guys are either doing solubles or they're doing what's called mini granules, which are the size of sand.
Slow
it's
SGN.
Not your it's lower SGN. It's not the typical, like, Ryan, on a lawn, your commercial grade lawn fertilizers, isn't the SGN like 150 to 200?
Yeah.
For commercial grade
For-
lawn fertilizers? Oh, like
Yeah.
200,
220.
240, 200,
Yeah.
240.
Okay.
Good range.
Okay, because I'm thinking, like, for what I see done on fairways as a granule is more like 100 to 90 SGN, the small stuff, so that you don't get the more pickup. But here's the problem with small SGN fertilizer. That's the kind of stuff that's about $70 a bag.
Yeah. But you know what, Ray?
It is.
It works.
It works.
well.
Yeah.
It does. And
So-
so my question, Greg, is there a time of the year where your lawn suffers decline, like where everything just starts to fall off and you're like, damn it, how did I end up here?
Summer. Yeah, so July and August are the worst. I would say anything above 85 degrees, my lawn just checks out.
Oh,
Oh,
I wonder how much of that are the older cultivars you've got in there.
It's 100%
Right.
the genetics.
Yeah, it's the cultivars they're old. I mean, this thing was seeded probably when it was built. So it's definitely the cultivars because the stuff I do have in there that's newer, I did get some. I think it was 2 years ago. I did grab some. It was a mix from Seed Superstore, so it had Midnight, a compact Midnight type. I think it was Midnight. It had some fine fescues, maybe a little perennial, and I didn't really know what I was doing then. So what I did, I killed off some bent grass, and at that time I didn't know what it was. All I know is it looked ugly, wanted to kill it off, so I killed it off and seeded that stuff in there, which was a big mistake because it's really dark green. It's slow growing, and it stands out like a sore thumb in my backyard, and it still does. But that stuff works phenomenally well in the summer. It stays green, no weed pressure, doesn't thin out. And the only thing is I think it's a little bit later spring green up. But it works exceptionally well. And there's a couple other spots I seeded as well where there was some garden beds. But I almost can guarantee that it's the old cultivars that it's old, it's tired. And that's why I'm thinking, do another interseeding in the fall and just kind of slowly Get some better cultivars in there. The ones I'm looking for are mainly compact America types, just because they blend in better with what I have. If I go with that ultra green, midnight, slow growing, I'm afraid that it's just going to look out of place.
We're back. We're back on the renovation train here. But obviously in stages, right? Would you consider doing like a section at a time, like blocking off 1,000 square feet and just establishing that area?
Yeah, I would think so. It'd
That
be
may
easier.
be,
Just
yeah.
Yep. You're
That
talking
may
just burn
be
it or use a diquat, that kind
either
of
or.
approach. Okay.
Either or.
Either
And
or.
here's the other thing too that I would say for seed establishment is a slit seeder, right? Running some grooves in the ground. Don't try and aerate and overseed it. If you're concerned about speed of establishment, uniformity of establishment, if you can get a slit seeder, zip seed it, and you'll be much happier with the result you get than any other method of establishment. I would even argue probably more so than even like a bare ground establishment.
Yeah, I bought one of those Sunjo Scarfires, and I
Hey,
used that
yeah, there you
at the
go.
lowest setting. It
I think
worked
that would work
fairly decent.
perfect for you. Yeah, I
Well,
don't think it's something you need to go spend $2,000-$3,000 on. So anything that'll cut
Yeah.
you some grooves in the ground.
Yeah, we're not going to make you buy a Graydon, okay? Because
I need a picture of a Graydon. What is a Graydon?
You not seen a Graydon? Hang on, son. Hang on. Let me get you a
yeah,
video. I'm gonna get you a video, please.
yeah, because
Give me a video.
when somebody talks about slitting or even verticutting with a walk behind, Matt, my head immediately goes to either Graydon or Dennis or Sissus.
The old sis.
Oh, I know this thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
There we go. Hang on. Let
Mhm.
me. I got a good one.
We gotta throw this up on the screen. This thing's legit.
Yeah.
This is the real deal.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah,
this
and
one.
the reason why I even know about those machines is because guess what a Hawaii Zoysia lawn does to your typical power rake or dethatcher?
Kind of what Freddy Krueger's left hand does to most people's faces. I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Is that his left hand or his right hand?
It's both, wasn't it?
Was it both? No, you're thinking of Edward Scissorhands.
Oh yeah, that's right. My bad.
That really
Right
ruined
there.
his social agenda. That really ruined his social agenda with Winona Ryder in that movie. There really wasn't. I mean, just saying.
Those are some good grooves. Look at that.
Look at my boy right here with the power paddle cleaning this thing up.
The power broom, yeah.
Yeah,
That
look at that.
that power broom attachment for the Echo.
Now, in that hopper mat, you can put sand, you can put other amendments, right? And it will drop it down into said grooves, right? So,
yeah, that's what I've had seen it before in the past, is where they're actually dropping sand into it. I see it on Twitter all the time too, with all the golf nerds out there doing it. But I mean, that's sweet. Don't get me wrong. That's a pretty bad news little deal there.
Yeah, so basically, Greg,
that's what we expect you to buy if you want to have a nice lawn, Greg.
Yeah,
you can't have a nice lawn without that. I'm telling you right
you're
now.
The only thing, my Ace Hardware might rent out a slit seeder, but I would have to check.
No, you don't want to.
That's about as good as I can get.
You don't want somebody beating up, the equipment that you're going to use. You want to buy this. You're going to be easily in that 12, 13 range. It's a good investment. I'm sure your wife will understand.
Okay.
And we can smooth this over for you if we need to. We'll write a note. We'll absolutely do that.
Yeah. We'll send a doctor's note.
That'll work.
Yeah. I will draft a doctor's letter for real.
Honey, will you bring me another beer, please?
I need a yard barn for that thing.
Yeah,
You do,
but that is like literally the way I'd address the problems of your grass not handling warm weather and the contamination with the quack grass is, how do you guys feel about killing quack grass? How far would you go, Ryan?
I'm all for it.
Would you be terrible to it and go full on soul stealer?
I'd
Yeah.
hell, I'd bring the Takuchi in there and dig that thing up. You know, get me a little track loader. I'm really wanting to just send Greg down the construction wormhole here and have him.
Greg,
I
let me ask you about drainage. How do you
Yeah.
feel about in-ground drainage?
like I said, this is not an intervention. We are trying to radicalize you right now. This is what's happening. So here's my question, right? So we talked about a lot of stuff. And I think like this, Greg sets up as another good repeat guest. You know, coming into next spring, early summer kind of time, right when things are really getting going up there for you. I'm just curious. Like we've talked about a lot. You've studied a lot. What are your goals? Like what else? We want to set you up on the right course here. So in this little last segment we have of the show here, how can we help you, finish off the year right, which it's really, really close for you to be in completely over. And what can we do to help set you up on the right path to start off 22?
Well, you answered one of my questions already, and that was using plant growth regulators, which I already kind of knew that was probably a good idea. But this fall, I just didn't get around to buying it, and but it ended up being okay. 2 weeks, I mowed it after 2 weeks, and it was pretty long because the cultivars that I have now, the common types, are pretty aggressive. So it does spread and it does grow quick, but I think I got some decent germination establishment. Not as much as I'd like to, but I think going into next year, I would probably do it again. I would do the interseeding. I'd use a plant growth regular. What do you guys think about wetting agents? I do have in-ground irrigation, so I don't really think that is needed as much. But
Okay. No.
If you-
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't
don't think
say it's
so.
necessary unless you're letting it dry out so completely and totally that it's difficult to re-wet. In that instance, I think that could be your friend, but I don't know a whole lot about Wisconsin soils either. The propensity for them to become hydrophobic. But I would think if you've got an in-ground irrigation system, growing lawn height grasses that are being mowed with a rotary mower, that it wouldn't be necessary for you in that situation. If you were trying to do that, like in, I don't know, we'll say 1,000 miles south of you, then I can say, well, that could be an arsenal in the toolbox to help in certain situations, but probably not up where you are.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So then my next
Agreed.
question would be, I have Kentucky bluegrass, fine fescue, perennial. Not a big fan of perennial. I like Kentucky bluegrass. I don't know how you guys feel about fine fescues up here. It actually works fairly well. I'm up far enough north where fine fescues seem to be okay, and they keep the weeds out pretty well. I think there's some different cultivars that have higher endophyte kind of infection. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Um, and the one I did use along with the MVS 365 was a Dunes mix by Barenbrug. So that has slender creeping red fescue and chewings fescue. And kind of my thought process was with that is I don't want that to dominate my lawn by any means because I know it kind of gives that wispy look a little bit, especially if it's mowed high. But I thought it would work good in like the more shadier, drier areas with lower traffic.
So you mix these two together, or these are just in a certain
Yeah,
spot?
I did about a 1-to-1 mix. So I think by weight, that's about 75% Kentucky bluegrass, 25% fine fescues. But the only issue I see with that is Kentucky bluegrass. It needs more nitrogen than fine fescue. So then it's the fine balance of do I if I put too much nitrogen, fine fescue doesn't like that, and then
Yep.
vice versa,
There's
right?
there's a lot of reasons to not mix those. I'm not making fun of you. I would not have done that. The reason I say that is number one, what you just mentioned, right? So nitrogen requirements, first and foremost. Number two is going to be irrigation requirements. Fine fescue doesn't really like the same irrigation regimen that you would be under. Now, again, you're kind of a little bit more at the mercy of the rain up there. Like, I'm sure that there's stretches where you have to irrigate for, several days or weeks on end, but it's probably not like months and months of droughty weather and, you're in total control. So there's that piece. The third thing would be just texture, right? Like, we still don't have a good way to match up texture between these two grasses. And what I mean by that is like a really finely bladed fine fescue, right, with not necessarily a coarsely bladed Kentucky bluegrass, but certainly more coarse than what fine fescue is. So getting them to look pretty together is going to be a challenge. And then the last thing, and I'll let Ray speak to this a little bit, is going to be your herbicide tolerance on the fine fescue is not going to be anywhere close to what it is on your Kentucky bluegrass. So Ray, why don't you tell Greg about some of the herbicides that you ought to stay away from if there's fine fescue in play, either mixed into the stand, homogeneously, or scattered about the lawn? Because I do see people get in trouble with this, where they spray their lawn and they don't know that they have fine fescue out there, and then whammy, we got some problems.
Okay. I talked about utilizing tenacity to discourage your crabgrass and your bentgrass. That's off the table if you have fine fescue as part of your turfgrass mix, because what the tenacity will do is it will burn out the fine fescue. Next thing that's out is this herbicide called sulfentrazone, because that too is going to burn the fine fescue more so than it will burn the Kentucky bluegrass. And the reason why I mentioned sulfentrazone is because sulfentrazone happens to be a very good option for controlling nutgrass or nutsedge. It is a rather good product for that. But say if I had to treat, a fine fescue lawn, or a lawn consisting of a lot of fine fescue, no sulfentrazone, no tenacity, I'd have to work with alternative products. And that just kind of is limiting because, as far as economy and efficacy, those happen to be two of the more economical and efficacious products. So, I just, and there's one more thing that somebody in the Discord told me about, in that fine fescue tends to be sensitive even to certain broadleaf herbicide products such as Speed Zone. He told me he was trying to clean up his, KBG fine fescue, or mostly fine fescue lawn, and the fine fescue didn't react very well to being treated with the Speed Zone.
Yeah, it's the PPO, right?
Yeah, that carfentrazone got a little too corrosive to the fine fescue.
Yeah.
So, but then again, that's I see that kind of as a problem, because you're just taking away all of these tools that I routinely use, with good effect. It's like you're taking away tools from the toolbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No bueno. No bueno. So
Mhm.
Greg, what else? What else can we help you with here?
I think I'm just trying to dial in the N rates and when. So have you guys heard of the PACE turf? I think it's the climate appraisal, growing
Yes.
degree
Oh,
days.
indeed we have.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you guys use that to kind of figure out annual N rates
It's a
on
good,
turfgrass?
Let
it's a
that be your
great
guiding
starting
light.
point. It's a great
Okay.
starting point, and then you kind of base it off of the weather and what you're seeing, right? And what type of
Yeah.
end sources you're using. So I imagine in your neck of the woods, you're going to be probably not quite. We had Jacob Baker on here several months ago or so, and he's up in northern Minnesota, and theirs looks like a warm season growth curve, right? So it just goes straight up in June. It's plateauing, and then about end of August, very beginning of September, it falls off a cliff. And it's not that typical cool season bimodal growth pattern that we would normally see, where we have a big flush in the spring, things slow down in the summertime, and then we ramp back up, not quite to what spring growth levels were, but we're in there in the fall. So that being said, have you done this for your location there in beautiful Wisconsin?
I'm doing it right
I
now,
have.
and holy hell, it is cold in the winter there.
It's brutal. It is brutal. But yeah, like Ryan, you were saying, it does have that almost warm season kind of a growth curve.
Yeah, and
Where
that's really
in June it's 100%.
Yeah, yeah, and so you're gonna have to. Can you screenshot that, Matthew? And
Yep.
Look at this guy. He's the best executive producer in the game. What's that? What was that guy's name from?
This is coming at you.
What was that guy's name from Boogie Nights? Burt Reynolds' character. That's who you are, Jack Warner. You're the Jack Warner of turf. Horner. Was it Horner or Warner? I can't remember. Anyhow,
I've never seen the movie, so
you've never
Jack
seen
Warner.
Nights.
Hell no, I haven't seen it. Don't be ridiculous.
Listen.
Are you kidding me?
Do you know how many people came up to me and were legitimately worried about you at GIE and were like, we're a little concerned about Matt? And I'm like, yeah, really? What's up? Well, I don't know how to say this, but he doesn't watch movies. It's weird, man. So I told them I would have a chat with you at some point, and one day we'll have an intervention where we tape your eyelids open to your forehead, and we will sit down and binge Netflix for like 74 hours straight. Okay, it's gonna happen.
I don't know.
I'm gonna duct tape you.
It gives me
you
anxiety
to a lawn
just
chair.
thinking about it.
I'm gonna duct tape you to a lawn chair. You're not gonna be able to move, right? And it's just the way it's gonna have to be. All right, let me pull this up real quick, Greg. I digress.
That's fairly accurate. Yep.
Yeah, that's hard in the paint there. So a couple of things here. Again, doesn't freak me out that you seeded August 11th. You're trying to take advantage of warm soils, still warm temperatures, but not terribly warm, right? And again, this is where if you are going to be interseeding and using existing, because look at your growth rates there, not a typical Midwestern or lower Midwest growth pattern where your August growth potential is in the mid 90s, right? Not mid 90s temperatures, folks, if you're following along, but growth potential, right, of how fast and quickly the grass could and should be growing. So all that being said, you can't think in that bimodal thought process, right? You can't think, well, spring I'm going to see this, it's going to tail off in summer. Like, unless you see, now this year wasn't it particularly hot in the summertime up that way? Like there was
this year was a shit show.
Okay, that's what I thought.
June was extraordinarily hot, which it was in the 90s in June, and this was like I think it was the middle of June, and it was brutal. And we had a stretch of drought. We didn't get much rain in the spring. June was terrible. July I think was okay, but we didn't get a whole lot of rain. It was just hot. It was humid. And then August, we got a lot of rain. And we got record rain in August. One day we got like 5.45 inches within 45 minutes.
That'll drive.
But we never had like
even higher.
Yeah, Right. So we had heavy downpours and then a stretch of drought, and then downpour and a stretch of drought. So it was a terrible season for Kentucky bluegrass.
Yeah.
And I irrigated during that time, basically just to prevent it from going dormant, and that was about it.
Okay.
So to put it into perspective, on June the 5th, your average temperature was 85.46. Your historical average for June is 69.2. So
Yeah.
we're talking about 16 degrees difference there that you're dealing with. Yeah, that's a foobar in the grass world in terms of shock and awe, right? 15 degrees, that is, especially when you're talking about going from 100% growth potential. And it's funny. Hang on, actually, I'll do this. Let me plug this in at an average of 85 degrees. Your growth potential drops to 24%.
Yeah, that
24%.
sounds
So
about right. It checked out.
yeah, yeah. You talk about bimodal, like you're going straight to zero right there in the summer months. And let me look at July here. See if we start to get some sort of recovery. Golly, why is it doing this? Why do I pay for a gigabit internet connection and I can't even load a damn. Okay, here we go. So here on July the 5th, your average temperature was 86, but then it tended to calm back down. But not great. I mean, you were probably, if you average it through the month, you're probably mid 70s through the month here. Actually, your average was 74.83 degrees for the month of July, which isn't too far off of your average. But yeah, I mean, you had a very nice dip in the middle of the season there. So and that's what's interesting about the climate appraisal form is that a lot of times when you're looking for your weather averages, the easiest thing to do is go to like weatherbase.com, right, and do it. Um, I would ask you to take into account. You can go to Weather Underground and look up your last year's weather history month by month. Plug those temperatures in too to give you another perspective of how that looks because it honestly makes this graph look completely and totally different in terms of what your nitrogen demand would be, right? Um, I'm moving into August here, and your average was 71.93, and that's now you're getting back on closer to your average. But if we pull this chart up here, I'm gonna send this to you, J Pink. You can put it on the screen as a bit of a before and after here. I mean, that is one hell of a drop in growth that just took place in the middle of your season, right? And you got to account for that if you can. And one of the easy things you may be able to do by accounting for it is just like not apply anything, right?
That's
Let
what I
it
said,
check
don't
out.
lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave it alone. If it's not going to utilize it, leave it alone. And if there were a possibility of, say, in June, you get this kind of extreme heat and extreme drought, I, for one, would be really reluctant to be playing around with any kind of a nitrogen source that would still be releasing massive amounts of nitrogen in that June timeframe. I'd be
And
reluctant.
see, and that's where you could get burned, right? Say mid-May,
Mhm.
you go out with a duration 90 product and you have a couple of those deluges in June and you've got 80 average of 85-degree temperatures. Well, you've got some pretty good release that's taking place in a time frame where you don't need very good release taking place, and now you're caught with your pants down and there's nothing you can do about it because it's going to be temperature and water dependent, right? So the only thing you could do is starve it of water in the hopes that it wouldn't release, but then you're causing the grass to check out or possibly die even if you're not getting enough water on it, right? So, um, when we talk about the complexity of slow release fertilizers, this is one of those situations where this is a complex situation where a slow release fertilizer could come back to bite you. And is an organic fertilizer, maybe in spring, a better suited fit for you here because you have to have the microbial mineralization in order for it to release. Therefore, you've got to have temperature and soil moisture for it to release. And so you can run it a little bit drier than normal, right? But uh, again, you run into a situation where you get a couple heavy rains and all of a sudden it's chooching again and it's starting to roll and it's hot as hell and you're gonna run into a different set of issues because of it. So it's a difficult play, right? And this is why when it comes down to having like ultimate control over your turf grass, like 100% total control over it, why people run a spoon feed program with minute rates of soluble in or soluble nutrients so they can control and account for it. That way, if they put down an application, they know it's only going to feed for 2 weeks. It allows them to pivot if they look in the forecast and they see this coming up, right? And they're like, oh, well, I got to back off, right? Instead of running a tenth of a pound, I'm going to run, uh, uh, a fifth of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I was going to say is that up there, it's okay. So you're in one of those unique areas where it's probably going to be like what we showed you in the historical average, but it could be different. Okay, like it could be just mildly different, but only for a month. And for me, you can kind of look at the weather and see what's happening. Like it's not going to drastically change overnight on you. You're going to be able to see these trends coming. And with that being said, I would rather opt for something where I had more control, more frequent apps, lower rates, and go about it that way. If you can commit to that, you want to press the easy button, go out there with some PCSU and carpet bomb the shit out of it. I mean, you're gonna get what you're gonna get, and that's just the way it is. So, I think I'll be anxious to hear, and I think this is what I would leave you with as homework. Right? Is think about the growth patterns you've seen in your lawn in 3 years. Think, go back and look at the weather data and see if it matches up and jives with what you think was happening at the time, right? Best you can tell from photos and things like that. And then build your plan around that. Like, I want you to take what you do know about N, right? And try to apply that into building out a program and a system that's going to work for you, not just agronomically, but also with your life and everything else you got going on and stuff like that. And let's talk about it here in another, what, 4 or 5 months before, shit really hits the fan, or some cases when the fire hits the shed. Been there. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do have access to a sprayable prilled urea that I can get my hands on. Yeah,
That is
I
gonna
do.
be
All I have is a 2-gallon pump sprayer right now.
It's
I don't
time
want
to
to get a
up your
backpack,
game,
right?
Greg.
Yeah,
It's time to up
spending
your game.
money. My
Hey,
wife's gonna love that.
no. Santa's gonna bring it for you. It's gonna be all right, right?
It'll be okay.
You know,
It'll be okay.
Yep.
Y'all have
And
fireplaces out there, right? It was just gonna show up in the fireplace one day. And you'll be like,
he's
Santa's
gonna
I'm just saying.
Santa's gonna wiggle his ass out of the Amazon van and bring it to the door. That's what's gonna happen. Okay? So
that's right.
So, gentlemen, anything here as we wrap up? We're coming up around 2 hours. It's almost time to start the show after, which we'll move through pretty quickly here tonight. I know Matt's got to get to bed and he's got some stuff going on, but
Yeah,
anything y'all want to wrap up with here?
yeah. I'm not going to be here for the after show. I apologize. My daughter's appendix ruptured, and so I've spent the last week in the hospital dealing with that. And so anyway, when we get off here, I've got to go make sure all that's good. Doesn't have quite decent control of her bowels right now, and
Okay.
it's a mess. I don't know how else to describe that other than it's a mess. But I'm glad that's over with.
Not
But
good.
I
Not
was going to say,
good. I
Greg,
mean,
thanks for coming on, and I hope you come back again as we dive into the season, and we can take the little bits that you pick up and stuff, and maybe help guide you along. To me, I love seeing how things change across this climate appraisal map when all of a sudden you start dealing with 85-degree average temperatures because that creates a whole new ball game, especially up there where you live, right? So I find that
Yeah.
interesting. We do have something in the
In-
mailbag, but what do you got, Ray?
Well, I was just going to point to the to that climate appraisal form, because that is my best evidence when I tell people, um, you are playing with fire, for example, going through mechanical operations on warm season grass at this time of the year, because it's November, right? It's November going into December. Our growth potential right now is starting to drop to the lower quartile
Mm-hmm.
versus, that scalp down to the dirt that I'm so fond of.
You love it. You do.
I love it, and I don't worry about it as long as I do that between April through September, because that's when, for example, my growth potential is at its highest. So, that growth potential and that climate appraisal form is probably the most valuable tool out there, because, common sense and logic tells you, why are you applying fertilizer when it is going to be releasing nitrogen at a time when it's not good for the grass, actually? And so for his case, he literally should be applying most of his fertilizers in August and September then, pretty
Mhm.
much.
Ray, have you heard of Carl Gillard? Carl Gillard from University of Connecticut.
Ah, I haven't.
He talks about late season fertilization and the issues that are come with that, especially with water quality.
Mhm.
He did a study, and I think it was back in 2014, might have been earlier than that, but he showed that after September 15th, you could lose up to 50% of the nitrogen you apply down. Um, in October, November, same thing. You have increases of loss, leaching, and then
Well,
it
and
didn't really make much of a difference the next spring when it came to turfgrass quality. So
okay.
that's just kind of the summary of it, but it's good information. I think Doug might have replicated it as well. I can't remember.
Well, here's the problem, is that you're talking about nitrogen rates being applied literally at a time when the grass is no longer actively growing. And I never can put my head around and accept the concept of applying nutrients at a time when grass is not uptaking those nutrients. I mean, I'm not on board for that. I never was. I don't like those so-called winterizer applications. I don't like those soil load applications where somebody's talking about, my soil test is low, so I'm going to sling a whole bunch of P and K in the fall when the grass is, basically no longer growing. I kind of say, stop, stop. Your grass is not uptaking it, because, you know, I think in terms of whatever the grass doesn't uptake and utilize immediately, that is the nutrient application that becomes an environmental pollutant. Plain and simple.
Now, Ray, would you look at like evapotranspiration rates during, I would say, like to kind of dictate when your last fertilization should be?
That's yeah.
I look at that
that's
as well. I look at that as
Yeah.
well. Is like, because
that's the main
I can
factor.
correlate, for example, if grass is not needing or utilizing water, that's also my signal that, for example, the grass is not going to utilize nutrients. Like, for example, I'm entering the time of the year where in my area, I am almost shutting down irrigation. Can you imagine that? I'm almost shutting it down. I go from running an inch of water per week to almost shutting it down. And so at this time of the year, I'd be foolish to be pumping grass with nutrients as well. You know, and for you, I mean, if you're looking at your lawn and it's no longer needing irrigation anymore, and it's also not raining, and the grass is not cycling such that it rains, it grows more, that's your clue that you shouldn't be putting anything else on it because it's done growing. So ET matters.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, for us in Wisconsin, I think the recommendation is not to apply. I think probably after October 15th here in Wisconsin.
And I'm going to guess that because that's when your grass isn't growing anymore at all.
Right.
It's done, right? Yeah. So why put it? Why apply it? That's a fair point. And for me, I'm not so much watching a date so much as I'm watching what grass is actually doing. Is it still growing? You know, that's my metric. Because guess what I pay attention to? Clipping volume. You know.
Gotta go with it. Gotta go with it. You know what, Ray? There's gonna be a volume of probably a lot of uncomfortable adult words that are going to come here in a few minutes, right? So if you want to join in on something like that, if you want to hear a little bit more about the dark side of lawn care YouTube and some of the unscrupulous, faith-based, and well, just really poor takes, like bad stuff that people are trying to put on video and pumping out there. Well, come on and join us. We'd love to have you be a part of it over on Dirty Deeds. So you just need to go ahead and become a member of the channel. You can hop over there. There'll be a private link. They'll be there for just a few minutes, not very long at all. So you need to act quickly and you can be a part of it. With all that said, Greg, you've been an excellent guest. We thank you for coming on. J Pink is going to book you to come back in a few months after you have taken the next deep dive, right, on your turf base jumping adventure. We can't wait for it. Looking to have you back soon. Everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.
Okay, we won't do the mailbag then, DeMay.
We don't want to do the mailbag? We can do the mailbag. Oh, wait, we'll do a burner return. Burner return. We'll do it on
Yeah. Save the mailbag for burner return.
All right.
Burner return mailbag. All right. Love you.